Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. A last-minute legal victory for the parents of Archie Battersby. Appeal court judges say the decision to turn off his life support must be reconsidered.
These judges had so much compassion and empathy and really acknowledged that this is all about Archie and nobody else.
A couple admit killing a man they call Dad, but deny murder. Their trial gets underway at Canterbury Crown Court.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer visit Crawley, one of the towns hit hardest by the pandemic. His message on tackling the cost of living crisis.
And teeing off in Sandwich. Military veterans begin a remarkable golfing challenge at Royal St George's. Good evening. The parents of 12-year-old Archie Battersby from Southend have won the right to a new hearing as the Court of Appeal ruled a judge should reconsider whether doctors can turn off his life support.
Archie was taken to hospital in a critical condition after an accident at his home in April. His family say his heart is still beating and they want his treatment to continue. Well, Joe Cosham is at the Court of Appeal. Joe, what more can you tell us?
Well, since Archie was placed in an induced coma back in April, his family have taken their legal fight to keep his life support going to the very top of the justice system here in this country. And today, they've won. The family's lawyer argued that the focus should be on whether it is in Archie's best interest to give the treatment rather than withdraw it, something they say the original decision here didn't focus on. And the three judges in the Court of Appeal today agreed with the family. Well, today's decision means that a new High Court judge will need to answer the question of whether continuing treatment is in Archie's best interests. Speaking to me outside court just after the hearing, Archie's mum Holly told me they felt like it was the first time in their legal fight that they'd been listened to.
That these judges had so much compassion and empathy and really acknowledged that this is all about Archie and nobody else.
How's Archie getting on?
He's progressing really well. He's gaining weight again. He's doing really well, isn't he?
Yeah, really stable.
He recognises when people are with him who he knows his BP fluctuates, heart rate fluctuates, and then regulates itself back down. Still holding his own body temperature, holding my hand, Ella's hand, my best friend's hand. Yeah, he's doing really well. He's progressing. He's progressing in the right way. It might be slow, but this is why I said from the start we need time. It takes 6 months, the stories that we're hearing from, positive, sort of hopeful stories that are coming through, 6 months for a child to even attempt to do anything. The fact that Archie's already showing signs is a very positive step, so he just needs time.
Well, this case has raised important medical, legal and moral questions about when a person is dead. And in what is the first case of its kind, Archie's declaration of death was based on medical evidence and the results of an MRI test being good enough. But the Master of the Rolls, the second most senior judge in this country, said today just being good enough is not good enough for Archie. These cases are heartbreaking for everyone and it has to be a proper determination of what is in his best interest. Well, that new High Court hearing is on the 11th of July. It does mean the legal battle goes on, but what Archie's family in particular, his parents, Holly and Paul, have won today is more time with their son, something they've been asking for from the very start.
Joe Cosham, as always, at the Court of Appeal. Thank you very much indeed.
In other news, a Sittingbourne woman who faked cancer, swindling well-wishers out of £45,000, has been ordered to pay back just £5. 44-year-old Nicole Alcabas falsely claimed she needed to pay for private cancer treatment in Spain. She was jailed in February last year, but a court has since heard she had no realistic prospect of compensating her nearly 700 victims.
Police are appealing for witnesses after a teenager was attacked in Hastings. Officers have identified 2 men they wish to speak to. The 18-year-old victim sustained serious injuries in the assault just before midnight on Badslow Road on Sunday, while he remains in hospital. Now, a court heard today a couple kissed and cuddled soon after killing a man they called Dad. Paul Wakefield was found badly beaten at his flat in Folkestone in January and died in hospital.
Shane Miles of Rock Avenue, Gillingham, and Kaylee Halliday from Crown Road, Sittingbourne, have admitted manslaughter but deny they plan to murder the pensioner. Sarah Saunders has been listening to the evidence at Maidstone Crown Court. Sarah, what more happened today?
Well, today the jury heard that both defendants did indeed know and frequently socialise with Mr Wakefield, to the extent to which both of them would occasionally call him Dad. Paul Wakefield was found in his own flat in a pool of blood with stab wounds to his stomach and a serious head injury. He later died of a bleed to the brain. Now, both the defendants, Mr Miles and Miss Halliday, have admitted to the killing, but they deny intending to murder.
What did each defendant reportedly say about the actions of the other Sarah?
Well, the prosecution said today that shortly after being arrested, both defendants turned on each other. Mr Miles said it was Miss Halliday who repeatedly punched and kicked Mr Wakefield, eventually taking a broken bottle, stabbing him with it and hitting him over the head. Miss Halliday says it was Mr Miles who repeatedly punched and kicked the victim. Now, it is the prosecution case that both defendants were equally involved in the attack, and the jury heard they will be shown CCTV evidence which shows the couple kissing, cuddling and laughing within 15 minutes of leaving the flat, and also that there will be blood evidence taken from the pair's shoes to show they both were involved in kicking and heel stamps. The trial continues.
Sarah Saunders, thank you. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has been in Crawley today talking to local people about the cost of living crisis.
Households in the town have some of the highest utility bills in the country, and it was badly hit during the pandemic with the loss of jobs at nearby Gatwick Airport, the area's biggest employer.
Mr Starmer told residents more needed to be done to help those struggling financially. James Dunham has more.
Sheltering from the cost of living crisis is becoming increasingly difficult. Sir Keir Starmer heard how much of a blessing Crawley's Hindu temple is for struggling families. He told this community the government's failing everyone: teachers, doctors, nurses, railway workers.
How much of a pay increase would you give public sector workers? 3%, 5%, 10% or more?
Well, look, there are different negotiations by different bodies going on. I want them to get round the table to negotiate a settlement. It's not for me to say what that precise percentage should be.
What do you think would be fair?
There's a mechanism in place. That's why we have those mechanisms. I want them around the table. I want these issues resolved as they are every year. Is that something that comes up a lot for you?
Yes.
The government say it is helping, with 8 million low-income households receiving the first instalment of a £650 energy support payment from next month, and its fuel costs causing the biggest concern for the volunteers here.
If the people can't afford to pay, what are they going to do? Are they going to cut the electricity off, gas off?
We provide free meals to people who are vulnerable. And we've seen numbers grow from sort of 20 now to near enough 60 to 100.
But high demand doesn't exempt the temple from high prices.
6 months down the line, at the moment we've got a surplus there. Cost to run this whole centre is £250,000 annual. If we can't raise that sort of money, we'll have to close off part of the services we offer here.
As part of my interview with Sir Keir Starmer, I asked him this key question. We're in a cost of living crisis. Why would life be any different under Labour?
Because we would be growing the economy. We would have taken an entirely different approach. In the immediate future, we'd have an emergency budget, reverse the tax increases and take other measures to help people with the cost of living crisis.
So are you convinced by that?
Yeah. I think we need to change. We definitely need to change.
It's just jumped on back of Boris every time. And I don't think he can make a decision to save himself, do you, Paul?
No, I don't think so. I'd so very well coming up with a headline, this is what we should have done.
Do you trust what he's saying?
The problem is, I think they're all very much the same, and it's who do you trust in general now? That's the problem, I think.
A back-of-the-net response? Not quite. Of course, COVID had this town crying out for support. Thousands employed at nearby Gatwick lost their jobs. Politicians and politics aside, people say further help will be needed for the hardship ahead. James Dunham, ITV News, Crawley.
The University of Kent has twinned itself with Kherson State University in southern Ukraine. It will look at how it can support teachers and students in the war-torn country. Its twin is in territory currently held by Russian forces, so has had to close its campus and relocate.
Plans to demolish an empty office building in Worthing and replace it with homes for homeless people have been given the green light. The vacant property is on a brownfield site and will provide 20 units of temporary accommodation. There are currently more than 1,500 people on the town's housing waiting list, with more than 1,000 in urgent need.
Now, a pair of cubs are among 40 bears rescued in a Sussex-based charity's biggest ever operation. Uckfield's International Animal Rescue has been collecting the caged bears from private zoos, factories and even petrol stations. It then transports them to its rehabilitation centre in the Armenian mountains, and they are so beautiful.
You are watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, demanding a fair deal in the workplace for disabled people. Campaigners call on the government to address the growing disability employment gap.
And fancy rehoming one of these. Soaring power bills means many people can no longer afford to keep their reptile pets.
And you can find more on today's top stories in the region throughout the day on our website. Go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Now, a mother who lives near Edenbridge fears she could miss her son playing football for England because the passport office has lost 2 of her passports.
Celia Evans sent her original British one back in February, but weeks later was told her application was withdrawn. Officials asked her to send her expired Australian ID to restart the process, but now her new application has stalled.
Well, with just 3 weeks until she's meant to travel to Sweden, she's worried she won't be able to watch her son Jack play in the Youth World Cup. John Ryle has the story.
And just cut off.
And that's what I experience all the time.
After 5 months of trying, Celia says she's at her wit's end with the passport office.
So I might do 4 hours of waiting or 2 hours of waiting and I'll still get cut off. It drives me insane.
She's one of more than 35,000 people who've had to wait more than 10 weeks for their applications to be processed. But Celia says hers has stalled because after she sent off her documents, she believes her original British passport and her expired Australian one have been lost.
To be trapped in this country and unable to leave, both because they've got my Australian passport and they've got my British one, it just doesn't seem right at all that I'm stuck here. I can only assume that that second application is lost because I never got an application number and nobody can see anything except, I think, that withdrawn application. So I don't actually know what's going on because nobody's actually telling me what's going on.
Celia's urgency isn't for a summer holiday. In 3 weeks, she has flights booked to go to Sweden to watch her son Jack represent England in the Youth World Cup. Although she's applied for an emergency passport from the Australian Embassy, they're worried it won't arrive in time.
I'm quite sad because I've been working up to this, and if my mum can't come and watch, it's almost like a part of me is missing in Sweden because she'd be there supporting me the whole time, bolsters my confidence, make sure that I'm ready for the game, but she can't really do that over a phone call.
I mean, it's a life event that I will never, ever get back. So if I miss it, it's an experience that Jack's going through that I can never share with him again.
Celia says speaking out was her last hope of getting a response from the passport office to try to ensure she's on the sidelines in Sweden rather than holding the line back home. John Ryle, ITV News.
Well, a passport office spokesperson told us staff are processing approximately 250,000 passport applications each week. And between March and May, 98.5% of applications were completed within 10 weeks. But people should apply with plenty of time prior to travelling.
The ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Is Mary Nightingale.
Inspirational and unfalteringly brave, just one of the many tributes paid to Dame Deborah James. The campaigner brought bowel cancer into the public spotlight, raising millions of pounds for research and saving lives. Hope for the parents of Archie Battersby after a court ruled judges should reconsider whether to end life support treatment. All smiles as Nicola Sturgeon has an audience with the Queen the day after announcing the next vote on Scottish independence. And the latest on how the Brits are doing back on centre court. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
We certainly will. Now, campaigners are calling on the government to step in and address the growing disability employment gap, which has widened as a result of the pandemic.
At the moment, disabled people in the South East who can and want to work are 23% less likely to be employed than non-disabled people. Catherine Walker has our report.
Mark from Kent is disabled, and he says finding inclusive and accessible work can be extremely challenging.
And through my experience, it's that employers have a fear of the unknown. So if they've never employed anybody with a disability, they don't know where to start. I don't think they understand the amount of talent that is out there. They do not understand, in my opinion, what a lot of disabilities are.
New research shows that disabled people in the UK face a pay and employment gap. Just 52% of disabled people are employed, compared with 81% of non-disabled people. When it comes to wages, disabled workers earn around £12 an hour, compared to £14 for those without disabilities.
There are a lot of barriers for disabled people getting into work, and one of the main ones is attitudes. A lot of employers tend to look at what disabled people can do rather than what they can't do, and assume that disabled people don't have the skills or the qualifications. There are 1 million disabled people who want to work but are denied the opportunity, and it's a massive waste of talent and ability.
It's an issue that Pippa is keen to address. She works for a charity that helps people with long-term conditions like herself find suitable jobs.
Often people with chronic illnesses are afraid of asking for reasonable adjustments because they're afraid of being stigmatised or seen differently, or they won't be considered for promotions and things like that anymore. So just having that kind of workplace culture where people feel they can have those conversations openly and it's not going to be of detriment, it's going to be of value, I think that's a really important part of the movement as well.
But campaigners say real change needs to be led from the top down. Kim helped set up the Disability Employment Charter, calling on the government to close the employment gap.
Well, I think one of the key things that we're calling for in the Charter is the introduction of mandatory employment and pay gap reporting for large companies with 250 or more employees, which is something we feel is absolutely essential if companies themselves are actually going to know if they're making progress.
Progress the Minister for Disabled People says she wants to invest in.
What we really want to see is people being able to start and stay and succeed in work. So those things need a range of solutions. We're working on this by investing £1.3 billion over the next spending review period in supporting disabled people and those with health conditions to start and stay and succeed.
But for now, the figures still show that disabled people face massive barriers to employment. Campaigners like Kim and Pippa hope that more awareness will inspire meaningful change. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Now, the number of people having to give up their reptile pets has increased due to the cost of living crisis.
Yes, charities like the National Centre for Reptile Welfare says factors like the amount of energy used to keep them is one of the reasons they're being rehomed. Derek Johnson has been to Eastbourne to find out more.
Pat Jennett from Eastbourne is an animal lover who kept 16 snakes. They included royal pythons such as this one. But she suffers from arthritis and with their welfare in mind had to part with them.
I was finding it difficult to do the cleaning out, water changes, feed, heartbroken. It wasn't a decision made lightly.
More and more people are having to get rid of their pet reptiles. Eastbourne Aquarium Centre says it's important owners know what they're taking on.
It can vary between different types of reptiles. Obviously, snakes don't have to have ultraviolet lighting, whereas 90% of lizards will, so that is an extra cost. UV lighting is the one, and the heating for reptiles as well can be quite high. Costs aren't enormous if you do it correctly.
At the National Centre for Reptile Welfare at Hadlow, they take in unwanted reptiles and rehome them. The owner of one of these iguanas died, the other couldn't afford the upkeep anymore. In the first 6 months of the year, the centre took in 896 animals, almost double compared to the same period last year when the number was 494.
Whether that's utility costs, food costs, fuel costs, all of this is adding together. And people are being forced into making the decision that perhaps they can't keep the animal that they've had and they need to rehome it. Utility costs. If those continue to rise, then I am fearful that more and more people will find themselves in a very difficult situation.
Change of circumstances is another issue. Pop the green iguana is here temporarily, while her owner is between homes. Then there are neglected or abandoned pets. This is a bearded dragon, a very popular reptile, but the centre's seen more coming in the first 3 months of this year than throughout 2021. Becoming more knowledgeable about your reptiles can cut costs. Apparently too many people feed bugs to the dragons, which can make them fat and ill and lead to higher vet bills. They're happier with salad, which is cheaper anyway. Derek Johnson, ITV News.
I think they're beautiful, really are beautiful, but like all pets, a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, and I have 2 dogs and I know that, so there you are. So get dogs or fish.
Yeah, will your dogs get on with the
not.
geckos and the lizards?
No, my dogs no, don't get on with a lot. Now, you'd think one of the world's most famous and beautiful golf courses was a world away from war zones. But one charity has found golf has helped armed forces veterans with their physical and also their mental injuries.
The charity On Course is now on course to St Andrews, having launched a relay from Royal St George's in Sandwich. Tony Green saw them off.
Setting off from Sandwich, these armed forces veterans have set themselves a serious challenge. They're the first of 56 people taking part in a charity relay from Royal St George's Golf Club, home to last year's Open, to St Andrews in Scotland, where it is this year. All to support an organisation that supported them to overcome physical and mental injuries through golf. On Course was set up by John Simpson.
A lot of them thought it was the end of their sport as they knew it, and many of them thought it was the end of their life as they knew it. It's amazing when we get the guys and girls to come along to the events we do around the country, you know, they think golf, well, none of them are golfers, and we get one of our double amputees or one of our guys to stand up there and 200 odd yards down the middle, and they go, wow. And they all, I've never known anybody not hit the wow shot in the first morning session with them. You just get hooked on the game.
Nick Franklin was injured in Afghanistan and was medically discharged from the army after 6 years' service. A below-the-knee amputee, he also had anxiety, depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
You know, I used to think it was a rich man's game, and then a few friends of mine got me into it, started playing, and then I got introduced to the On Course Foundation, and ever since then golf's ultimately saved my life, you know, and it's helped me progress, move forward. You know, it's given me confidence, which I lost quite a bit through my injuries, and you know, I've kind of got that military banter back again with the guys that I play with.
The relay will take them to 64 golf clubs over the course of a fortnight, finishing at St Andrews, the home of the game that's helped them recover. Tony Green, ITV News, Sandwich.
I wish them all the best. We'll be following their progress. Now, Pip is with us. Now, Pip, it's that time of year when we see a lot of baby animals, and you've brought us something a little bit different, baby bats.
Yes, that's right. So one of our local rescue centres has recently taken in 3 little pipistrelle bats, so we can have a look at them now. Varying sizes, but a couple of them really tiny and probably just little pipistrelle pups. Now, these 3 were found in separate locations on the ground by concerned members of the public. I'm pleased to say they're doing really well, and they'll soon be strong enough to be released back into the wild. are they? They are
news.
super tiny.
They are lovely.
So why do they end up on the ground? Well, for tiny pups that are emerging at this time of year, it's just that they're not quite strong enough to take flight again. For older ones, it can be exhaustion or even injury. But what can we do if we find a little bat on the ground? It's the 3 C's. So firstly, cover. Cover your hands ideally, wear gloves before handling them. Contain them somewhere quiet and safe, so a shoebox with a few holes in the top is ideal. And care. Seek advice from experts. So the National Bat Helpline, a fantastic source of information. They can put you in touch with local volunteers. Failing that, your local wildlife centre or even your local veterinary practice as well.
Good advice.
Great advice, Pip. Can you advise us, though, what we should be wearing? I mean, this weather's been topsy-turvy, hasn't it?
It really has. Yeah, it's all over the place. Classic British summer. But I think as long as you've got sunglasses and an umbrella handy, you should be covered.
Cover all bases.
Absolutely. We are ready for what's coming up next. Let's find out more. Here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
It's still looking pretty changeable over the next few days. Then a mixture of sunshine and showers. Where we see the showers, some of them could be heavy, perhaps thundery, but where we see the best of the sunshine, actually feeling fairly warm. So low pressure, very much the culprit out there at the moment, continuing to bring showers on and off through the next few days. But signs as we head through the weekend and more especially into next week that high pressure will start to build in from the Atlantic, and that could settle things down nicely. But that is still a fair way off. Out there through this evening and tonight, we'll continue to see showers moving across the region, perhaps merging at times to give some longer spells of rain. But with the showers and quite a bit of cloud, it will be a mild night. In fact, temperatures for many of us holding up in the low teens. Tomorrow morning then, a mixture of sunny spells and showers from the word go, and those showers perhaps becoming a little more widespread from mid-morning onwards. 1 or 2 heavier bursts possible. They will be quite slow moving, and if you do catch a heavier downpour, you could also hear the odd rumble of thunder or even see a bit of hail falling. Nevertheless, still some sunshine in between, and in the best of the sunshine, feeling pleasant enough, highs of 20 degrees. High tides for tomorrow then, for Margate there, 1:30 in the morning, 1:45 in the afternoon. And then beyond that, well, tomorrow showers will tend to fade out through the course of the evening, and then Friday will be a repeat performance with a mostly dry and bright start, further showers bubbling up through the day. But as we saw on our pressure sequence beyond the weekend, things do look a little more settled all round.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
So all pretty changeable over the next few days, but we will have some drier, brighter weather in between the showers, and in the sunnier conditions, pollen levels will remain high or even very high. Do take care.
Well, the weather could have been a bit better for Matt and Sangeeta today. They've been at Beale Water near Wadhurst in the patchy rain, but it was all for a good cause.
3, 2, 1.
Yay! Good luck!
Matt, Sangeeta and the Mayor of Tunbridge Wells were asked to start a walk in recognition for those who care for loved ones. The Big Step Out was also a chance for carers and their families to come together with other people in the same situation.
Well, we just think carers are amazing people. What they do, the things they sacrifice, the time they give to the person they care for, and they very, very rarely have a stress-free day full of fun. So that was the idea, just give them a bunch of fun and let them know we care about them.
Wonderful, and Matt and Sangeeta will be back tomorrow, and in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
For now, though, from all the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.